Welcome to Straight Shot Politics. Each episode will bring you in-depth discussion with experts, community leaders, and analysts who will share their insights, experiences, and predictions. From local elections to global diplomacy, we'll provide you with the tools and perspectives you'll need to navigate today's real-world landscape.
Welcome to Straight Shot Politics. I'm Lisa Chafee.
I'm Josh Cease.
And I'm Michael Nash.
Gentlemen, we have State Representative Brian Stewart with us this evening. He is currently serving his third term as state representative for the 12th Ohio District, which includes all of Madison and Pickaway counties and western part of Franklin County. He is also serving as the chair of the House Finance Committee, is also part of several other committees. He is a veteran. He enlisted for active duty in the Army after experiencing 9/11 as a high school senior. He is an infantry veteran of the Iraq War and earned the Combat Infantryman's Badge, in addition to twice receiving the Army Commendation Medal. Following his service, he returned to school, earned his bachelor's and law degree from the Ohio State University Moritz College of Law. I have to say you got to stress that. And last October was honored with the Legislator of the Year Award by the Public Children's Services Association of Ohio, which recognized his leadership on the state budget process and workforce issues related to children's services.
Is that all? Is that
yeah.
Really?
There's a lot more. I just had to cut it down, sir. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be with you guys. This is I love podcasting, and so great to be on your show.
Well, I'm excited you're here because, as we discussed offline, you were our very first interview almost 2 years ago. So I'm glad to have you here. You are in a primary race, so you're up for your fourth and final term as state representative. How are things going?
Oh, they're going great. I mean, we've won this district handily all three times previously. We've won Pickaway County, I think, 10 election cycles in a row, if you count my races for county commissioner. And we've been endorsed by Madison County Republican Party, Franklin County Republican Party, the Ohio Republican Party, virtually every grassroots organization that has a good following. So very confident where we're going to be. We've raised almost $500,000 already to, not just reelect me, but hopefully strengthen our caucus, add more members to our currently 65-seat majority, protect, some seats that are going to be a little tough this fall. So, that's been my focus, and we're going to win handily in May and then look forward to November.
So for anybody who isn't familiar with you, even if they live in your district and you represent them, give us a Cliff Notes synopsis of the political and worldview philosophy that you have. If you were going to write your own kind of autobiography about here's my politics, here's what I believe, here are my priorities, what would those be?
Yeah, I mean, usually the question you get when you run for office in 2026 is along those lines is why the heck would anybody want to run for office in 2026? I was a senior in high school on 9/11. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with my life. And that day changed the whole course of everything. And so my mother prefers when I say I left college, but I dropped out and enlisted for active duty from the campus at Ohio State. Left school, did 3 years on active duty, did combat patrols all through Iraq, made it home when 6 guys I served with did not. And so I came home with a view that I was never going to take this country for granted. I love Ohio. I wanted to find ways to earn the extra chance at life that I have that friends do not, and didn't know exactly where that was going to lead, but I've always been interested in history and government and got involved in my local central committee. And as anybody who's been involved with central committee knows, if you show up and you've got a decent resume, eventually somebody's going to say, you should run for something.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's true.
So I ran for Asheville Council as a second-year law student. I got elected county commissioner at 29 years old. I was the third youngest county commissioner in the state of Ohio at that time. And so, look, I believe in all the things that I think conservatives should: strong national defense, free market, limited government, individual, economic, religious liberty, all of those things. And I think that we need more people, especially now, that are serious people, that have done some things, that bring some skills to the table. I've been a practicing attorney for about 15 years now, and so I see the way Ohio laws work and don't work every single day. I see the way that the things that happen in Columbus affect people's daily lives and the way that they should be improved. And what's animating me right now is I want Ohio to kind of reclaim what we used to have, which is we are the coolest state in America, right? It used to be that everything exciting was happening in Ohio. And there's a reason that we're the mother of presidents. We're the reason that, for a period of time, every nominee or the ticket had somebody from Ohio. And we lost that over a period of time. And I think that I'm more excited now than I've ever been that we are on the verge of getting it back. We are winning huge projects. We are, I toured Andrel today, 4,000 plus jobs coming to this district, to Central Ohio. This is a cutting edge, military contractor, from a very conservative founder. And that project could have gone anywhere in America, and they chose to come here. And I think it's because we are building things in Ohio and making strides to kind of get our groove back.
That's exciting.
Well, a lot of people, I've been surprised that there's been actually quite a bit of vocal pushback in certain circles about, about how Ohio is, maybe we logistically we're trying to grow too fast, and it's causing problems with rising, home values in certain areas. I mean, if you bought a home 4 or 5 years ago in Johnstown, congratulations. That thing, you probably have gained a couple $100,000 on its value, if at least. Mm-hmm. But, then you come into things like the crowding, the lack of affordable housing. But we also don't want to just be like, okay, stay in a little bubble, because if you're not trying to expand, if you're not trying to grow, you won't get anywhere in the long run where you want to be anyway. But how would you address people who just think, maybe we should just slow down a little bit? Do you think we're going at the appropriate speed, and do you approve of how quickly everything is seemingly has come together since just 6 years ago?
Well, I remember when I first got elected to council in Nashville, the former mayor, Chuck Wise, late mayor, great leader for our town. One of his lines was, "If you're not growing, you're dying." And I think you can see that in little towns across Ohio and certainly states across this country. Either you are one of the states that is progressing, where people want to be, where young people want to stay, where businesses want to locate, or you're not. And I think what you've seen is you can get left behind really, really quickly. And so, look, we always want to grow in a way that is responsible, that, is not, haphazard and, creating, logistical difficulties for residents. But, North Carolina is not looking around and saying, gee, are we growing too fast? Georgia is not sitting around saying, are we growing too fast? Florida and Texas certainly are not sitting around saying, gee, are we growing too fast? I think Ohio can make it work like those other red states that are booming have. I would like us to be the booming red state of the Midwest. And you can start to see those metrics happening in real time. There's a projection out there right now about what the next census is going to look like. And it has Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Pennsylvania, all losing population, all losing a seat in Congress. And Ohio, for the first time in about 20 years, not losing a seat in Congress.
Wow.
Right? Because our population is, we are growing. It's not quite a boom yet, but we are growing and what really we are doing is keeping more of our own kids here. And I think when folks talk about housing supply, we focus on what I tell people is, do you want to have homes that your kids can move into? If you want your kids to stay, we have to have a place where they can go. and you want it to be affordable. And a lot of the reason why values have exploded in Ohio is because it's basic conservative supply and demand. We have not built enough to serve all the people that would like to buy, and so prices are high. And I think that there is room to continue to grow. We're not going to grow everywhere. You don't have to drive very far out of downtown Columbus to be in a cornfield.
Right.
And I think that is still going to be the case in 5, 10, 20 years. I think people overestimate the degree to which we can grow and be competitive and still maintain the rural small town charms that we have.
So let's talk about budget and taxes. So you stated during the last budget cycle that 3% is low enough with regard to the Ohio income tax. Do you still believe that? And would you fight Vivek's plan to eliminate the income tax?
I don't remember saying that. I mean, I got interviewed about every single day. I'm thrilled that we did a 2.75% flat tax on the income tax. I think what I was saying at the time is we were certainly getting much, much, much more interest in property tax reform than income tax reform. And I think that's true. When the House had the budget, if I got 100 calls, 95 were about give me relief on my property taxes. I don't get many calls about saying, let's get more income tax relief. I'd like to do it, and we did. But at the time, our focus was on let's really focus on what we're getting the most feedback on, which is property tax. We've done $3.3 billion of property tax relief. That's not easy to do. There are a lot of competing voices that have a vested interest in opposing the property tax relief that we push through. But look, once the budget, the House really focused on property tax relief. We had a much larger property tax relief in the House version of the budget than the Senate did. The Senate kind of inverted it, right? They had a much larger income tax relief than property tax relief. And what we effectively did, as you do in the budget process, is you kind of met in the middle. So we have a 2.75% income tax, flat tax, second lowest flat tax in America. Certainly the lowest income tax of any of our neighbors. I'm thrilled about that. I hope and believe that, I'm going to take our nominee, Vivek Ramaswamy, at his word that he wants to continue to reduce that income tax, and he's going to have a lot of supportive folks in the House. And, when I plan to be the finance chairman again, and I'm really excited that his first budget will start my committee.
So speaking of property taxes, Axe the Tax is really working hard collecting signatures to have a ballot initiative to completely eliminate property taxes. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think that if you're going to propose to eliminate $24 billion worth of funding for our police, for our fire departments, for our schools, for our developmentally disabled neighbors, for parks, for senior citizens, you need to be honest about what the consequence is and probably need to actually say what your plan is to make that up. No state legislator has come to me as a finance chairman with a list of $24 billion of cuts. That would be pretty drastic. We need property tax relief. We've done $3.3 billion. I think we can do more. We've passed legislation to stop the spikes. We've passed legislation to cap increases. We have passed legislation to give the counties additional tools to double the homestead and owner-occupied rollback. And I think that is working in the communities to get relief to who needs it the most. So when folks come and say, well, I'm just going to wipe $24 billion off the board, understand making that up is I'm very skeptical that some folks who don't want to pay more property tax twice a year are going to be excited about paying a 20% sales tax 900 times a year. And so we need relief, but eliminating entirely without a plan. Being a conservative doesn't mean I have to be bad at math, right? And so the entirety of our income tax generates about $8 billion. The entirety of our sales tax generates about $13 billion. So doing that math, our property tax is more than those two taxes combined. So if you eliminate it without a plan, you are going to defund police. And I recall when we didn't want to do that.
Right. Well, one of the arguments or the solutions that's been offered is a consumption tax, which I'm not a mathematician and I'm not a finance person, but just thinking broadly, to me, it seems more fair because a consumption tax, everybody pays, whereas with property taxes, you've got people in apartments who don't pay property taxes. And I know the property owners do, and they do, pass that down to the renters, although I don't think it's near as much. Like my own house, my property, my mortgage payment went up $150 a month because of a school levy that was passed. Other people, we've seen stories in the newspaper in the Linden area where their home values went up from say 40 grand to 100 grand, which increased their property taxes. So what's fair in that, and what can be done about the amount with the school boards? All these school boards, who a lot of them, like Columbus, is sitting on $200 million in cash. Hilliard's sitting on $90 million in cash. Granted, we shouldn't be voting for them. I yell at people who vote for them, but do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, in the House version of the budget, we passed a provision that would have said that if a school district is carrying more than a 30% carryover balance, that they wouldn't get to collect any more property tax revenue. I mean, that would have been the most effective, widespread property tax relief you could possibly do. Now that our friends on the other chamber didn't really like that proposal, and so as part of the compromise, we went a few other directions. Look, everybody who lives somewhere is paying property tax, whether you're the one writing the check to the treasurer, or whether your rent is going up to pay the tax somewhere else. So, I mean, I think I'm here for the debate of what is the most equitable way to tax folks, but to say, well, it's just going to be a consumption tax, it'd have to be a very, very, very big consumption tax. And I think again, I'm skeptical that folks who are saying, hey, I've got to pay property tax twice a year, it's $150 more than it was last year. Well, if you're paying 20% every time you go to the grocery store, and I mean, look, with a consumption tax at a level that you would have to raise it to make up enough to cover our police and fire if we eliminated property tax entirely, no one would buy a vehicle in Ohio ever again. I mean, the amount of that tax would say, go buy that somewhere else, right?
That's a fair point.
So there's a lot of, how hard that hurts, I think, is something you'd have to consider.
So looking at my tax bill, my property tax bill, Lisa kind of got into it a little bit. But when I look at my property tax bill, I'm paying 60% of it towards the school system.
That's right.
So with that, you kind of touched upon it a little bit. Besides passing legislation that makes it so they can increase their wants or their need, would there be any ways to go in and I can't think of a good verb to say, but say doge some of those school systems so that when we talk about every time they go get an increase, your Lisa's went up $150 a month, mine went up $330 a month on my house payment every month for a school levy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's hard to reconcile as state legislators is, we've had 3 years of discussion about property taxes. And in 2023, there are about 900 property tax levies on the ballot statewide, and 880 of them passed. Right. So, while us sitting around the table may say, well, we don't think folks should vote for these. We, the people, are raising taxes on ourselves when it comes to property tax levies. And so, I've had, I'm in Pickaway County. I've had a constituent call and said, hey, I moved out of Hilliard to get away from these high taxes. And I moved to Commercial Point and my taxes are going up. And I said, well, did you vote for the school levy? Yep. Did you vote for the township fire levy? Yep. Did you vote for the township operating levy? Yep. Did you vote for the parks levy? Yep. Did you vote for the DD levy? Yep. Did you vote for the senior center levy? Yep. Did you vote for the township, on and on and on. And so the gentleman had voted for about 7 or 8 tax increases in a row. And I said, you realize those are property tax levies. And when they all sort of, compound on themselves, that's kind of how we get to where we are. You would have a ton of appetite in the Republican caucus to continue to take a look at what a great many of our school districts are doing. We have local school boards in Ohio for better and worse is kind of my answer. I think a lot of school boards view themselves as employees of the superintendent. That is not how they were designed, and that's not how they're supposed to be. And so, from our standpoint, I think a lot of tools are there. We need more people who get elected to those jobs, who understand and are willing to actually use the tools. The state doesn't set the budget for local schools. They set their own. We don't get to determine how many administrators they hire. The state doesn't get to determine whether, for example, they decide to pick up both the employee share of the pension and the employer share of the pension. There are many, many, many decisions made by your local school board that contribute directly to what that budget looks like.
So we've spent a good amount of time here talking about property tax and talking about these kind of things. So when our tax dollars are getting spent, we want them to be spent wisely in the state of Ohio. Since you do chair the budget committee, I want to ask you, I'm a diehard 44-year-old, lifelong, live and breathe Cleveland Browns fan. However, this deal that Mr. Haslam negotiated and the governor helped push along and get it done with $600 million of Ohio taxpayer. They won't call it a subsidy per se, but I'm a Browns fan. I would love, sure, go build a great stadium, try to host a Super Bowl, an NCAA Final Four, what have you. But my point is, when that to me, even though I love the team and I want to see Cleveland do well, and I think it would do wonders for the state of Ohio to get WrestleMania, in an indoor facility in Cleveland, I cannot sit back and go, oh, this is a good use of my money here in the state of Ohio. So I was just curious if you can go a little bit in depth on that, because people are getting, and it's not just here in Ohio, it's all over. Why are we subsidizing billionaires, to build their stadiums, whether it be NFL, whatever it is, pick your poison. So I'm just curious how you feel about that whole deal here in Ohio. And do you agree with the way it was, the way the state of Ohio and the Haslam ownership group negotiated that?
Well, it was done in the state budget, and the state budget has my name on it. So I'm not going to dodge the issue or throw the idea under the bus, because I'm the chairman of the finance committee. Let's talk about a few things that I think that get very much under-publicized in this discussion. Number one, if I was king for a day and I could say that no state in America can offer a stadium deal, I would do it. But the reality is that's not where we live. It's the same with a lot of economic development projects that we have. If we didn't do a property tax abatement for Andrew would be in a different state, and they would have those 4,000 jobs. And we have seen teams move around the state chasing better deals in other states, okay? The deal that we've done in Ohio is the most conservative stadium deal that's probably been done in America, and here's why. We have calculated to the penny what the increased revenue from this activity would be. The Browns have had to deposit $125 million, which is going to grow over time to $250 million. If at any given time in a year, the projections that they made, as in the taxpayers are making money on this deal, if we are not making what they said we would make, we have a tangible asset sitting in the bank that we can draw down on to make the taxpayers whole. And we have done this math over a 30-year period. So the taxpayers are going to make more money than the $600 million that's been what I would view is more of a loan, okay? Because we are getting paid back in tax revenue, and we have tangible security to make sure that those projections come to pass. No state has ever done that. Red states all over America are doing these deals. Tennessee, people tell me to be like Tennessee. They're spending $1.2 billion of taxpayer money for the Tennessee Titans. Missouri, a lot of people say Missouri's passed more conservative legislation on this topic or that topic. Missouri just rolled out $1 billion plus, I think they're almost to $2 billion, to try to get the Chiefs from Kansas City. Indiana, Indiana did a $600 million stadium deal 15 years ago. They just offered to do another one for the Browns. So
the Indiana Bears now, the Gary Bears, they're calling them. Yeah.
So this has been sort of the price to compete and keep sort of these economic drivers in our state. And when we say, hey, we want our young people to stay, we want Ohio to not be a boring flyover state. We want to have, national leading events. These are the kind of spaces that the states that are beating us, these are things that they have. And I'll make two more final points on this since we loaded up. My beloved Cincinnati Bengals went to the Super Bowl about 4 years ago, and they went to Los Angeles and went to a palace, SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. Not one single Bengals fan came back and said, you know what? I'm really proud that our stadium is nowhere near as nice as that, right? They said, I'm really glad we don't have something like that in Ohio. No, they all came back and said, gee, California, they got it. That's a palace. They have events there all year long. They understood why folks were proud to have that in our community. And I think that Ohioans are going to be proud to have something that cutting edge, that nice here. This is $2.2 billion of private investment. If it was done on a factory, we would have no compunction about joining in that. And the last thing is on the unclaimed funds. The House didn't propose to use unclaimed funds. The Senate did, and that's kind of where we landed. A huge chunk of these unclaimed funds that we're using, we literally can't get rid of if we tried. We have no idea who they're from. These are from like the Rockefeller days, right? A huge chunk of the unclaimed funds, we have no information on who it belongs to. And so we have no way to give it back to the quote unquote rightful owner. So the question continues to be, well, do we just leave it sitting there forever saying, gee golly, wring hands, what are we going to do with this, Or do we do something unique that we would not otherwise have the opportunity to do? I don't want to just throw that money into the bureaucrats in Columbus to, create a couple other programs that nobody's going to know about and we're never going to see how they do. To partner on a project like this that I think is literally going to kind of transform this entire Northeast Ohio area, I think it's worth it.
Okay, so I guess that kind of leads into my follow-up on this. Would you guys have signed off if it didn't include the whole Brook Park becoming more than, it's not just, and for anybody who's not familiar, this is not just going to be, okay, here's a standalone stadium.
Yeah.
It's a whole community development, restaurants, malls, housing, all of this kind of, the best way to put it, I don't know if you're familiar, but like Bridge Park in Dublin, right? That's like, it's kind of like that on steroids, even bigger. If it hadn't included all that other economic development around it, would you have signed off the way you did?
I don't think so, because I think that a big part of the rationale for us was you are going to generate so much more tax revenue from that activity, right? You're going to have the hotels, you're going to have the restaurants, you're going to have the retail, you're going to have all of the amenities around it that make it more of a 365-day-a-year event space rather than a 9-weekend-a-year football stadium. So when we're doing the math on how much is the state of Ohio going to generate in income from this site, this was really unique in terms of being able to generate that extra revenue. And I think one thing that's lost on people too is we've been doing publicly funded taxpayer stadiums literally for 100 years, right? Cleveland Municipal Stadium was built by Cuyahoga County and the city of Cleveland. Taxpayers paid for that stadium. Riverfront in Cincinnati was paid for by the taxpayers. Now, the difference was when the government, as you can imagine, when the government was the only one building the stadium, sometimes they didn't look very nice, right? You sort of got the lowest bidder, the cheapest seats,
Old Riverfront. Tell me that didn't have charm and character. Wasn't a cookie cutter.
I have some love for it.
Just right out of looked like a cereal box.
I have some love for it, but we know that it doesn't hold a candle in terms of some of the amenities, some of the food options, some of the the comfort level, the boards, the things that folks say they want when they go to these stadiums. So what has happened now is we have kind of had the owners come in and say, well, hey, you could build a cheapo Dollar General brand, $500 million stadium and, maybe it lasts for 25 years and then we tear it down because it's falling apart. Well, why don't you spend the same $500 you were going to spend on the cheapo stadium and I'll spend $2 billion more to make it SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, right? And I think we need to keep track of that, where it's like spending taxpayer money on stadiums, that's nothing new. What is new is kind of partnering with folks willing to put an awful lot of private money investment skin in the game to ultimately create a product that is better for the resident.
However, there's a lawsuit, and I forget who the gentleman is that filed the lawsuit on behalf of a group of people, claiming that using the unclaimed funds is actually unconstitutional. And just recently, as I understand it, a judge agreed and put an injunction on that. So talk us through that and what.
Put my lawyer hat on for the day. So,
Yeah.
Much like at the federal level, you have some very partisan activist Democrat judges in Franklin County who have taken upon themselves to now basically strike down all manner of state statutes and gum up the works and delay the enforcement for as long as they possibly can. I have zero concern whatsoever that what we did is constitutional, legal, and eventually our Ohio Supreme Court will confirm that. But just think about this. No conservative, whether you like this project or not, should be excited about the idea that one unelected magistrate judge in Franklin County gets to substitute their opinion for the entirety of the spending decisions of the Ohio General Assembly. We are the power of the purse. We are the budgeting authority. We've made a ton of decisions. Some you'll like, some you won't. But that's the democratic process, not sort of this activism where an unelected magistrate ties up $1 billion of funding that's going to go into our communities and really make a difference.
So you are working on several things legislatively to get passed. What are you the most passionate about? Tell us about it.
Oh, boy. Many things. So, I have a bill to codify Chief Justice Kennedy's dissent in a recent case where the Ohio Supreme Court was, again, very activist and sort of struck down our whole defamation statute that had existed for more than 100 years. The Ohio Supreme Court has now said that basically you are on the hook for defamation forever. We had a 1-year statute of limitations in the code. They have created a discovery rule that says that you can be on the hook for something you said or tweeted or for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The clock doesn't begin to run until the person who's offended finds out about it. I think that is 1,000% at odds with the concept of free speech and allowing folks to have a free exchange of ideas and not having to look over their shoulder for legal liability for all the time. I'm working on an issue that I think might surprise maybe the country club Republican set from 20 years ago, but I think is in line with where our party is going now. Ohio has capped damages if you're injured or sexually assaulted or at $250,000.
That's
for non-economic damages.
Morally, I don't think that's morally right.
Our Constitution would generally agree with you, but we've had a cap for about 20 years, and that cap has never been raised. Right, so I represented a young lady over the summer in between when the budget left the House. I had a jury trial, and in that jury trial, I pursued damages on behalf of a young lady who had been raped 6 times between the ages of 6 and 10.
Oh my gosh!
And now she was an adult, and her non-economic damages, and for reasons we won't belabor here, but in a lot of these sex assault cases, what you pursue is non-economic damages, right? Because it's hard to put a dollar value on some of these things. Her damages were capped at $250,000. And I think that Ohioans believe that if you have been sexually assaulted, your non-economic damages, your peace of mind, your nightmares, all the anguish that you've suffered is worth more than $250,000. I think if you can no longer have sexual relations with your spouse, I think that's worth more than $250,000. If you have to wear a diaper for the rest of your life, I think that's worth more than $250,000. If, like the young woman in Toledo, your boyfriend spikes your drink with abortifacients and you lose your child, and it's not old enough to have viability, right now your damages are capped at $250,000. I think that's wrong. And so I have a bill to update that for inflation and increase that to about $415,000.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is no price. You can't determine a price.
No.
And I know that they have, insurance companies and all that. They do. They somehow, if someone is murdered, and the family, takes the assailant to court civilly and sue, they put a price. Well, this person could have earned this X amount of dollars and stuff like that. It's hard when you start mixing the legalities and the emotions, and it's devastating. And for sexual assault victims, I think what needs to happen is harsher penalties. Deal with it. I think that is more important than the money part. I mean, obviously, especially for young girls, money would help therapy, etc.
I think you're going to see, whether it's me or somebody else, I think you are also going to see eventually a bill to impose capital punishment for child rapists.
Needs to be.
I have a bill. I've had a bill for 2 General Assemblies in a row to try to restart our capital punishment program because that is what the law says. We have unanimous juries in counties all across the state who have put more than 130 of the most heinous murderers in our state on death row. Our governor since 2018 has claimed that somehow Ohio is the only state in America that just, gee golly, can't find any of those capital punishment lethal injection drugs. And so we have had sort of a moratorium on one person's decision for 8 years.
That's funny because a rifle round costs less than $1.
This is true. So I introduced a bill, Mike, to that point to say that we could use nitrogen hypoxia, we can use the firing squad, we can use any constitutionally legal means. And if we can't find lethal injection drugs, then we need to do so.
How about fentanyl?
We have met with the Trump administration, and they have said we want states to push this issue. Florida has changed its statute to say that you can have the death penalty for child rapists. And they want to pick that legal fight in the right way in the United States Supreme Court because I think there's a sense that our United States Supreme Court may revisit some of that capital punishment jurisprudence and allow that. And one other thing I'm working on, Lisa, is a bill to increase the damages caps and increase the statute of limitations for children who have had gender surgeries, to allow them to recover more damages and to do so for a longer period of time.
Thank you.
I was very active on the SAFE Act and helping get that passed. It went through the committee I served on. Now, we have largely ended this in Ohio. Mm-hmm. It's time to make it clear that there's a financial penalty for this nonsense as well.
Well, we're going to be talking to Representative Gary Click soon, who's introduced the Affirming Families Act. And I assume if you're not a co-sponsor, you will support it. And that bill will make it so judges cannot remove custody from parents simply because they will not affirm.
Just happened in California.
Well, it's happened here in Ohio already in 2018. In Cincinnati, it happened.
Oh my gosh, I forgot all about that. That's been a while ago. But yeah, because it just happened in California, and it was all over the news out there. But they California CPS came in and took the kid because the mom would not call the boy a girl.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen cases where in Texas, even the mom was pushing the gender transition since the boy was 2 or 3 years old.
I remember that, and the dad was fighting tooth and nail.
And she ended up moving to California, and he's lost all hope. Right. But here in Ohio, what I would like to see happen, and maybe it's in the works, I don't know, the hospitals lose their funding, not just from the feds, but from the state. I know for a fact that the hospitals, Nationwide Children, has been doing these surgeries, and I had shared this information with many people. I'm a medical coder, and the way they're getting away with doing it is they change the diagnosis codes that the kid was admitted for. And that's how they're still getting away with doing it.
Well, look, I think this is why being involved in the legislative process really matters. And, I asked the questions that really nailed down that referrals were happening from these hospitals. Of course, the company line was, we don't do referrals for gender transition surgeries for minors. And I said, well, do you provide them a list of providers that do provide these services, well, there might be a list out there, and maybe we do give that to them, but we don't consider that to be a referral. And that clip kind of went a little viral. And I mean, that was the moment where a lot of our committee members understood that, yes, there, more was happening here than folks understood. I've been really pleased, though, to see since that bill has passed, Nationwide Children's Hospital came out and said, we are not doing surgeries. Then they said we're not doing puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. And then they've announced they're just out of the business altogether. Now, more work needs to be done, but I think we have set a pretty strong line to show that this is not what we're going to do in Ohio. And you are seeing these hospitals respond. It is not 2021 anymore. And I think that we're winning on this issue. We just need to continue to press the advantage.
Brian, this is, I think you have, anybody who didn't have a sense of who you were or what you were about now, I think they got a pretty clear picture that you've painted, brother.
Yep. And I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, because the other thing just real quick, I was going to ask you, what does in the next two, we're going to have a new governor. I'm going to, I hopefully an actual conservative governor. And I'll just say that you don't have to comment on that at all.
I'll comment a bit.
But, we're going to have a new governor, hopefully more in line with more of, I think, where the legislature is, at least in the House, definitely. What are you excited about being able to get done? And what, if 2 years from now you're sitting here doing, our 1000th podcast or whatever, what do you want Ohio to look like 2 years from now compared to what you're walking into in this primary and then in the general?
It's a great question. I mean, and the first thing I would mention is I'm very proud of the budget that we passed. For the first time in at least 26 years, for as long as anybody can remember, not one single Democrat voted for the budget that I oversaw. First time it's ever happened. So, not everybody's going to like every single thing in it, but there was so much conservative policy in that budget that Democrats, not one single Democrat, could bring themselves to pass it. Now, we had 69 line item vetoes from the governor. Mm-hmm. That's also, to most people's recollection, a bit of a record. There were things in there about, we had a provision that said you can't take a farmer's land to build a bike path, eminent domain protections. That got vetoed. We had greater property tax relief. That got vetoed. We had a whole host of other provisions that I think everybody around this table would be excited about that got vetoed. Now, that's his prerogative, and we operate knowing that that's kind of where he's going to be. So overall, I think you hit the nail on the head. Vivek Ramaswamy is going to be willing to sign a lot more things that I think this legislature would like to pass. I think there are some structural reforms to state government. There are some structural reforms to how we interact with our county governments. There are some structural reforms in our schools. I think just kind of across the board, I think a lot of conservative legislators are going to have a freer hand to be bolder than they have for the last 8 years. And so that excites me. I think that, again, getting to a place where Ohio is a place where everybody around the state says, if you want to get a good job, you want to have the American dream, you want to have affordable quality of life, go to Ohio. And if you want to have a small town feel, we got plenty of those. If you want to have a cool big city feel, even if you're conservative, look, we do have cool cities here. And I think that we need to invest in all of them. And so I'm just excited to get Ohio back on the map and to have the opportunity to be bold.
So my question is, a couple of years ago, you introduced a fabulous piece of legislation that would raise the threshold to change our state constitution.
Yeah.
Which has been changed over 170 times as compared to the United States Constitution,
That's right.
which is less than 100.
I still have a few arrows in my back from that whole thing too, but
well, and I'm really frustrated that it didn't pass. It needs it. Do you think we can, with a new governor, hopefully Vivek, that we could revisit this issue?
I love talking about this. It's a fascinating topic, and I think folks, there's a dynamic of why we. Well, here's the challenge in doing that today. I still think it's good policy. I still think it's too easy to amend our Constitution. I think you should have a 60% threshold. My position has not changed. However, since we had that vote, the radical left has put in a ultra-radical abortion amendment in our Constitution. And so the question that I think a lot of folks on our side are going to say is, strategically, is it better to raise that threshold now and say no more, right? Maybe, we don't know all the issues that the radical left and the coastal billionaires might try to fund in Ohio, and we want to raise that threshold to 60% from here on out and kind of guard against everything that's coming. Or strategically, you might say, look, I hate that abortion amendment so much that, and I think that getting a 60% vote to rescind it would be so difficult that I don't want to go that way right now, right? I want to be subject to a 50% threshold if folks want to try to rescind that. So I think that's going to be the big debate that we have to resolve in the conservative movement before we kind of go down that road. But absolutely, I believe then, and I still believe, amending Ohio's Constitution should be much more similar to the federal process than just essentially being sailed to whoever has the biggest checkbook.
Great. It will be interesting to see how things are going to play out over the next couple of years. If anybody would like to help you with your campaign, be it donate funds or donate their time, knocking on doors, how can they volunteer?
I'm one of the easiest to reach legislators in all of Ohio. I have a very robust social media presence, so most folks can get a hold of me I'm on X at Brian Stewart OH, on Facebook, Brian Stewart State Representative. My website is stewartforohio.com. We've got that WinRed link there. We are raising money, like I said, not just for my race here in May, but in races all across this state, some tough to win districts. We'd love to keep that 65-seat majority. We'd like it to get a little bigger. And so having veto-proof majorities, having the ability to pass things without having to go get any Democrat votes is what every Republican would aspire to in the legislature if we could. So, stewartforohio.com, donate there, and find me on social media, and let's talk.
Brian, thank you so much, and it was a pleasure to finally get to know you.
That's been great.
I've worked in radio for years and years, and your name would come up in a lot of the articles I was, researching to do. So to be able to sit down and actually have a face-to-face conversation has been really incredible.
This has been great. I didn't realize it had been so long. Time flies for me. So let's
it's been a while.
Let's not make it so long for my third appearance. Do I get like a green jacket if I'm a three-time host?
We'll have to do maybe a special hat.
Right. It's like Tom Hanks on Saturday Night Live,
And also, thank you for your service.
Thank you much.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Representative Brian Stewart, thank you. We wish you the best of luck in your primary. This has been Straight Shot Politics.